And then there's one other detail that some of us may not have picked up yet. It's a little, it took me, it was a little bit clunky to me at first in the software. And what Logos is doing is dividing things up into stress units. So Dvar Yahweh here is one stress unit. And because you look, there's no stress mark on Dvar. There's no accent mark. But there's that little accent mark up there. So Dvar Yahweh is one accent mark. And if you click on it, it's only going to send you to Davar. It's not going to automatically send you to the other component in that stress unit. So what if I want to look up Yahweh in the lexicon? What do I do then? Well, I right click, and now it's breaking it down into the lexemes. There's Davar, and there's the root, Dalet Beit Resh, to speak, because the word and to speak obviously goes together. And now here's Yahweh. So I can click on Yahweh, and then it's going to change this down here, and you go to your lexicon down here and click on that, and then we have Yahweh. And so let's do it again. Let's repeat the process. Let's go to, so Dvar Yahweh, the word of Yahweh, Vayhi, and it came and it was, and the Dvar Yahweh came to El Yonah, to Jonah. And let's click on that, double click, and it's sending me to Jonah's name in the lexicon. Well, what if I want to study this preposition El, to or towards? What if I want to study that? Well, I have to right click, and then it's breaking it down into the lexemes where we have Jonah's name here, and then we have the preposition here, El. So I click on that, and then I have to go over here and click on Concise Hebrew Aramaic Lexicon, and then I get to the other term in the stress unit. And let's just do it one more time, just for fun. We have Ben Amittai, which is son of Amittai. And so it's construct absolute. This is construct absolute. So we click on this, and it's sending me to Bain, but it's not sending me to Amittai. Well, what if I want to look up what an Amittai is? I'm going to right click, and it's dividing it out here. And we have Ben and Amittai. And then my phone is ringing. Please ignore that. And I'm going to the Concise Hebrew Aramaic Lexicon, and it's, wait a minute, I did the wrong one because the telephone distracted me. I'm going to repeat it again. I'm going down to Amittai, and I'm clicking on that, and it's going to give me Concise Hebrew, and there it is. It's a personal noun. So just to be clear, when there's a stress unit and you double click and you want to get to your lexicon entry, and there's a few 2 or 3 words in a stress unit, the only way to get to the other words in the lexicon is to right click and then break them down and then click on them individually. That's the only way to do it. Other than you can also type in the Hebrew letters up here. Like if I type in B and N, then it's going to send me to Bain or son. So that's the other way to do that, but it's more convenient to just right click. Let's think together for a minute about a difference between the New Testament and the Old Testament. This is just some background information for you all. A key difference between the New Testament and the Old Testament. Let's compare the length of time it took to produce each. So the New Testament was written across a period of about 50 years, from around 50 AD to around 100 AD. But then the Old Testament was written across a span of time, about 1,000 years. And that's a huge difference, 50 years and 1,000 years. And languages are always changing very slowly. It's so slow that we really can't see it happening, but if you go back in time about 500 years, the English language would be quite a bit different from our modern English today. And if you go back 1,000 years, it would be very much different. And we can see that taking place in the Hebrew Bible in a few different ways, with the vocabulary and also with the verb system. You all have learned the four main conjugations: the vayiktol, which is narrative succession, the yiktol, which is future and modal, and the katal, which is past tense of various kinds of past tense without succession, and the vkatal, which has the meaning of the yiktol, future and modal, but with succession because it has the vav. So y'all have learned those four conjugations, and those are from early, called classical biblical Hebrew, like the first 9 books of the Old Testament from Genesis through Kings would be classical biblical Hebrew. But then we also have examples of late biblical Hebrew, LBH, and I just want to show you a couple of snapshots of how the verb system has shifted across hundreds of years in the production of the Old Testament. So first, we're going to look at how the participle in late biblical Hebrew is much more important in narrative than it was in classical biblical Hebrew in the older Hebrew narrative. So let's look at an example in Esther at how the participle is taking much more of an important role in storytelling in late biblical Hebrew. So the language change across 1,000 years is not a total change. We still have the 4 conjugations that we've talked about. Their use shifts a little bit, but they're still there all over the place. But there are some changes. And the first one I want you to see is how the participle takes a much bigger role in storytelling in the later part of the Old Testament than in the earlier part. So let's do a screen share here, and we'll take a peek at Esther, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is Esther 9, 3 and 4, and all the nobles of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and this is where we're going here. This is the participle that's actually doing the heavy lifting for telling the story. The doers of the work, which belong to the king. The lamed there is possession, the king's work, doers of the king's work. They were helping, they were lifting up the Judeans. So this is a participle. This is a PL participle, masculine plural, from the root nun, sin, aleph, and they were helping. And the simple point here is that in classical biblical Hebrew, the participle would not be used to carry the story forward like this. So an example of late biblical Hebrew, and we have the same thing. We have the participle doing the heavy lifting in the sentence here in verse 4, because Mordecai was great in the house of the king, and his renown or his fame grew, and there's a participle, holech. His reputation spread, his fame grew. Holech, a kal, active participle, doing the work that another verb form in older Hebrew, in classical biblical Hebrew, the participle would not be doing this heavy lifting to actually carry the story forward the way it is in late. Here's an example of how the meaning of a word has shifted across hundreds of years in the Old Testament. This word avodah, which means work. If we look at an earlier portion in the Old Testament, like Numbers 18:4, pre-exilic, like from Moses and that sort of thing, the law codes in the Old Testament, we see this word avodah here means the physical labor that the Levites do. The avodat, which is a construct form of the tent, ha-ohel, which is the tent of meeting. So the Levites were responsible for setting up and taking down the tent of meeting. Physical labor in the older portions of the Old Testament, avodah, means physical labor. But if we go forward and look at a post-exilic use of it, not only does it include physical labor, but we'll see that it also includes something new, which is the priestly activity, the things the priests do. Now we're looking at the same word, avodah, in 1 Chronicles 9:13. And there it is in construct form again, avodat beit ha-Elohim, the service of or work of the house of God, which is the temple. And there's a new layer of meaning in avodah here in this post-exilic text, because it's talking about priestly activities like sacrifices and so on. So we have seen in the 1,000 years of production of the Old Testament, across that vast span of time, the meaning of words, some words, has shifted. Question 1, in verse 6, why did the author choose vayiktol conjugation for the verbs vayikrav and he drew near, and vayomer and he said? And why did the author choose the imperfect yiktol conjugation for the verbs yitaset and noved? So the vayiktol conjugation is the main ingredient in a narrative clause. And going back to verse 5, we have several narrative clauses. Vayiru, this is they were afraid, the sailors were afraid. Vayitzachu, they cried out, each one to his God. Vayatilu, and they threw the cargo overboard to lighten the ship. And then we have the parallel clause, Jonah had gone down with a katal verb, yarad. Jonah had gone down to the hold of the ship, or the inner part of the ship. And then we have, again, two more narrative clauses. He lay down, vayishkav, Jonah laid down, vayeradam, he fell fast asleep. And remember, the vayiktol verb in narrative like this can be thought of as advancing the slideshow ahead to the next slide, the next thing happening in the plot. So the vayiktol verbs in verse 6, vayikrav, he drew near, the head sailor, and this root here for sailor comes from the noun for rope. So this is Rav is the head guy of the head rope guy, because sailors work on ropes. So this is just advancing the narrative to the next sequence, that the next thing that happened was the sailor approached Jonah. And the next thing after the approach was that the sailor spoke to him, said to him, and then he says, Ma'alecha, which is what to you, literally, which is a way of asking why. And then we have a nifal participle, nirdam, why are you sleeping? And then we get to, so this is quoted speech here. And we get to our yiktol, or imperfect conjugation verbs, yit aset, that perhaps, ulai, perhaps the God, the deity, will pay attention. And so remember, the yiktol is future or modal. So this is a modal idea of maybe the God will listen to us, future modal. And then this is also a future idea, so that we will not, or that we might not perish. And remember, cognitively, future and modal are really close together in your brain. Will perish and might perish are not all that far apart in meaning.